Hi, and welcome to our very first episode of True Crime Folklore. I'm your host, Abby, and this is my co host.
Adam Johnson.
And on the very first episode of this podcast, we're doing. What were we doing again?
We're doing the Aswang, a mythical folklore creature from the Philippines.
With the Aswang, there are many different types of Aswangs because it's known to be like a shapeshifter kind of situation.
But also, there seems to be a magical kind as well. They put hexes on people and curse people. And there's so it's kind of like a shapeshifter version, a ghoul version, a vampire version, and a witchy version.
And a werebeast or like a werewolf kind of situation.
Yep.
There's also like a what's it called again? The
Oh, the
mana.
Mana Magal?
Yes, that one. It's known to be like the leader kind of situation.
Yeah, it seems to be one of the more prominent and more well-known ones. And it's a very interesting creature too.
Especially since it likes to eat like fetuses
Yeah,
from like sleeping pregnant ladies.
yeah, so from my understanding, because these are fascinating creatures, but I've only started researching these recently because I'm a massive nerd and I love this kind of stuff. But the top half separates from the bottom half, and it flies onto the roofs of buildings and has a very long tongue that goes through a hole in the ceiling down to the navel of a sleeping pregnant woman and consume the fetus.
But it's also described to look like a kind of like a vampire-ish. Research that I've done, they've said it looks more like a vampire, kind of, if you're like trying to describe it like a female vampire.
Yeah, they do seem to be very, very female predominant there. I haven't heard of any male Minamagals. So, I mean, eating fetuses, I think this is more feminine kind of dark side of the creature. One of the defining traits that is common for all the Aswang is evil. Like whether they be a shapeshifter, a witch, or anything, they're like the epitome of evil creatures in the Philippines.
And also, they are very good at blending in when it comes to the daytime because that's apparently when they're not as strong. They're less likely to be able to overtake like any human is during the daytime. So they also have to like disguise themselves so they can like shapeshift or like transform into like just say a female human or like an animal or some at some places I've even heard on the internet that they also hide as a like shapeshift into like objects so that they can stalk their next prey or like to see who they can actually want to eat.
See, that's very interesting because I read that particularly big animals like big dogs or wolves and like mutated ones, some without tails, they've been told to be aswangs. They can turn into people. I hadn't heard about objects, so that one's actually quite interesting. And the manamagal, from my understanding, actually is allergic to sunlight, like it kills them, just like Western vampires and stuff like that. So they say that one of the ways to kill one is while it's flying, its top half is flying around, is to find its lower half and then sprinkle salt or spicy sauce or something like that on the lower half, so then it can't reattach. And if it can't reattach, then the sun's going to come up and destroy it.
Oh yeah. There's heaps of stuff that like harm the swangs and stuff like that, like salt, garlic.
Yeah, even semen, pins with broken hooks on them, iron, holy objects, holy water, knives under the bed, iron. It's pretty much like anything, a garlic, anything that can destroy like folklore, mythical creatures seems to work on this. So it doesn't seem as scary as some of the other ones that can only be killed by one thing. But yeah, there we go. But I don't think they'll harm it. I think they just kind of scare it off. The smell of leather apparently scares it off too. But the only way to kill it is to contaminate the lower half so it can't reattach. That's one of the interesting things is, folklore exists in almost every culture around the world. But most of us in like especially Western countries are like, oh, they're a fun story, or they might be, ooh, scare children. But in the Philippines, it's very real to a lot of people. I mean, I've never been. I've talked to quite a few people from the Philippines and also from my research, and a lot of people really do believe in the Aswang. It seems to be a lot more real. Like, if somebody talks about UFOs or ghosts, some most people just scoff, or like, it's a matter of, you most people disbelieve it, and then the people that do believe it are kind of a bit weird. But it seems to like be the flip side, especially in like the rural places in the Philippines and out in the jungles and in the small villages. It seems to be like a very real threat to a lot of people over there. Yeah, and I think even in the modern times, there have been cases of people being killed for being a suspected Aswang. Like, there's been children killed by their parents. People with like neurological or mental disabilities have been killed because they, have an epileptic fit, and people assume they're turning into an Aswang and they've been killed. It's a very real threat to a lot of people.
And didn't they used to tell the Aswang stories to the other people to scare them off or something like that?
Yeah, and in fact, quite a few times in like the medicine people, like back when the Spanish colonized, that they would use, like, they call them quack doctors now, but like these are like traditional doctors, and the Spanish, wanted to scare people away from them and towards their medicine and their church and their beliefs, so they labeled them as Aswang, as evil people, and so they would go towards the church. But even in World War II, the Philippines was occupied by the Japanese, and there was one guy, and I'm ashamed to say I don't know the guy's name. I read it and I've completely forgotten, but he would pretend to be an Aswang. He spread the story around this village that it's infected with an Aswang, and so, to try to keep the Japanese troops away, and apparently it worked. Like, the Japanese troops did not want to stay in their village because they were afraid they were going to get killed by this creature. But also the Japanese used it too because they wanted to get all the villagers out of the village, out of their village homes and into camps and popular large population centers, so they can try to find the guerrilla fighters that were fighting against the Japanese, and so then they could find them a lot easier. So they would kill people, put holes in their necks and hang them up upside down so they'd drain of blood, and then say it was an Aswang to try to scare the villagers.
Mm.
Yeah, apparently it worked. And in fact, there's, for such a fascinating creature, there's not a lot of resources that I could find about it. There's even a great anime called Tress on our Netflix in New Zealand, and it's a Filipino action anime with Aswang in it, and it's such a prominent thing in the Philippines, and it's just a shame that like there's not much known about it outside of there. It's a really, really interesting creature, and it has a lot of power. And in fact, I believe they in the Philippines they know that there's a place Caprice in the Panay Island, and they say that that's the home where the Aswang comes from, and so there's a lot of stigma that people coming from there that they're Aswang, and they get like a lot of negative stigma. And at one point they tried to embrace it, try to empower themselves with it, and they had a Aswang festival, which of course the church did not like and shut it down pretty quickly. But a lot of people went there, and there was big boom to tourism, and from what I could tell from the footage, it looked really fun.
Yeah, but they didn't like date back to the 16th century or something like that, like the history.
So most of the places that have a strong presence of Aswang, like Caprice and stuff, there are places that were colonized by the Spanish in the 16th century. So I think the Spanish used that a lot to try to scare people more towards the church. But the first noticing, or the first documented case of Aswang as a word or as a creature was actually predated the Spanish. It's there were two Filipino gods, One began with G. Again, I'm sorry, I'm still very new to the culture, and I'm absolutely loving it though. That was like a good god, and then his brother who's called Aswang, was kind of like his brother, but it was his opposite. So one was light, and the other one was darkness. So the light one was very powerful. He controlled fire. So when the people displeased him, he would shake the earth, and if they really annoyed him, he would erupt and burn the people. And Aswang wanted, he was like shunned by the people. He was darkness, and he wanted the people to love him. So he asked his brother for fire, so then he can give it to the people, and for gratitude and for love. And his brother, saw that he was just doing it for his own greed, so refused him. So then he snuck back in, bribed the guards with gold, and stole the fire in the coconut. And he ran back, but he wasn't strong enough to control this fire. And when he was heading back to his mountain, every village he passed burnt down. And then the good god found out and went back and defeated him, took the fire back, and then just erupted and just lay down like lightning and fire all upon the mountain where the Aswang was. So he would never forget what had happened if he crossed him.
Yeah, but isn't that one of the ways to actually kill an Aswang, not just harm it like the salt or something like that?
Is to burn it.
Yeah, or like one type of Aswang or something.
Possibly. I mean, there's a lot of different types of Aswang and probably different ways to defeat them. But again, it's like, yeah, it's a very risky situation because, I mean, there are people with a neurological disease, especially in Caprice, which cause them to have seizures and muscle spasms and stuff like that. And people think that it's an Aswang. So then they kill these poor people that are suffering. So it's very, very risky to talk about how to kill one because they might use it on some poor person with a disability.
Yeah.
And if you want us to do maybe a different folklore from another culture, if you enjoy learning about this stuff as much as I do, or even half as much as I do, let us know maybe some interesting ideas, some new interesting creatures that you would like to learn about or like other people to learn about. I'm happy to learn this stuff and share it with you all. Thank you very much for listening.